you. We could be done right now. I know I say that sometimes. If we could live what we just heard, we would be all set.
Oh, I know.
Yes.
It's a practice though, right? That's why we call it a spiritual practice, not a spiritual perfection.
Yes.
And we're all works in progress, and we're all doing just fine. Right where we are, just how we are. My title today is Letting Go for Lent. So in this Lent season, as you know, it has been seen as a time of sacrifice, maybe a time to give something up. But I ask perhaps we not think of it about lack or deprivation, but about being a spiritual renewal. A time of spiritual renewal. It's an invitation to release, again, release that which no longer serves us. To clear our spiritual vision in a way. To better see the presence of God in everything and everyone, all the time, everywhere. We make space within ourselves for divine transformation. Spiritual growth requires new consciousness. Right? Not just new habits. Now the habits or practices support our shift in consciousness, but it is new consciousness that we need. Today we explore the power of letting go, how releasing can open up a greater place within us for clarity and divine flow. Now I've mentioned before, as you may know, if you remember sort of 3 fundamental steps for spiritual growth, it always begins with awareness. Right? Nothing changes within us without our awareness of it. Right? The second step in that process is acceptance. Right? Once we've become aware of something, we often want to fight against it. Right? We push back. We want to control it. We want to act like it's not there. We want to do something to make it go away. Right? Instead, the only way that anything is going to change is if we accept it. That doesn't mean we approve of it. It means we accept it as being, this is how it is right now. So yes, this is how it is. You might not like it, might have a vision for something better, but we won't get there until we acknowledge this is indeed how it is. And from there, you can guess, we move to release. Right? Only then can we actually do the work to let go of whatever it is that is holding us back, holding us down. In the Gospel of Matthew, you hear, and this was always one of the oddest teachings for me, you cannot put new wine into old wineskins. You know, the parable of the wineskin. My understanding of that is that if you have a new way of being, new thoughts, you need to put that into a new consciousness, because it will not work. If you try and introduce these new ways into your old way of being, it's not going to happen. It's not going to take root. We need a new consciousness for accepting new ways of living and being in the world. Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore said we must deny the old worn-out beliefs, I like that description, and affirm the new understanding. We let go of the old and make room for the new. That's what we can do in this time of Lent. Or as you may have heard, this is one of those quotes that's been attributed to many people. I'm just going to call it anonymous. It says, holding on to anger, holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other guy's going to die. Right? Really, when we hold on to something that's not serving us, it's only us that is harmed by it, nobody else. Letting go can be thought of as surrender. Release is a word we use a lot. I release and I let go. You know that saying, you know that song. That's pointing at exactly this. There's a quote in the Gospel, Luke says, not my will, but yours be done. And I have a friend that phrases it somewhat differently. She says, let my will and thy will be one. Let my will and thy will be one. That can be a prayer that we use to remind ourselves we want to align our thinking with the divine mind. Align our thinking with God mind. Myrtle Fillmore said, when we let go of personal striving and yield to divine guidance within, our highest good unfolds naturally. I want to emphasize the last word, naturally. It unfolds naturally when we allow it to. It's an effortless process, an effortless practice in a way. If we're struggling in conflict against it, then it doesn't feel effortless, it feels anything but. And nothing changes, right? As long as we stay in resistance, as long as we're unwilling to surrender and let go. But when we become willing to surrender and let go, you will hit a point, I guarantee, where all of a sudden it feels easy. Right? I've shared the story that comes to mind in my own experience for that is when I quit smoking. I smoked most of my life. I quit about 6 years ago or so. Yeah, in 2018, I think. And I am an excellent, experienced smoking quitter because I've done it countless times. I'm so good at it. And what I found there very directly, this exact lesson right in front of my face, I could not be free of that addiction until I completely accepted that I had that addiction. There it is. Yes, this is the way it is. As long as I was saying, oh man, I really got to quit. Oh, this is not good for me. I know better than this, blah, blah, blah. As long as I was in that space, nothing's going to change. I'm actually locking it in place. I'm putting energy into keeping it there by fighting with it. Right? But when I finally let go and accepted that this is how it is, then quitting felt effortless. Right? So in my experience, 2 outcomes. When I try to, it's either impossible or it's easy. I like easy. Now getting there took some doing. But this same principle applies to anything. Not just a chemical addiction, anything. Anything that's going on in our lives, any thought patterns that we have. If we resist them, they will stick around. If we accept them, now we have a chance. Now the door is open, at least. Also from that, I remember when I was in resistance to it, feeling like, you know, like there's something, I'm not good, something wrong with me. I'm bad, I shouldn't be doing this. Self-criticism is what I'm saying. You know about that. Well, that you can also release. But there is, I invite you to consider that whatever's going on in your life is not a problem. You are not a problem. Things happening in your life are not a problem. They're an opportunity. And I'm reminded of that by this quote from Hafiz. He said, the place where you are right now, God circled on the map for you. You are in the right place at the right time to move forward for whatever it is your vision of your life may be. The trick is to stop resisting it. Easier said than done. We allow, I love the word allow, we allow ourselves to be free. We don't force ourselves. Forcing doesn't work. We allow it to unfold naturally. Mr. Fillmore said, we're not limited by our past unless we choose to hold on to it. Now, we talked about this in our meditation this morning at 9:30 in the discussion afterward. This came up. It doesn't feel like I'm choosing to hold on to it. It feels like it just is, right? Like it has its own existence. There's nothing to do with me. I want it gone, and how did it get here, I don't know. But through our practice, what we discover is whatever it is, we have created it. That's both the good news and the bad news, right? We have created it. I created my own problem, my own addiction to nicotine, right? The good news is, if I created it, I can uncreate it also. So the door is open. By acknowledging, by being willing to say to myself, I created it, I'm taking, that's acceptance. I'm taking ownership of it. It's not something, tobacco is not doing anything to me, right? I'm the one who's created the situation. That gives me the power to uncreate it. G.K. Chesterton, a writer who wrote Father Brown. You ever seen that mystery series on TV, the Catholic priest that solves mysteries? You gotta love that. Father Brown was created by G.K. Chesterton and written by. But G.K. Chesterton also said angels can fly because they take themselves lightly. Right? Can you see that this releasing, this accepting that goes on, this acknowledging like, oh, this is mine. Things get lighter. Your life gets lighter. Yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes work. Notice I didn't say anywhere it's pain-free. This process is not pain-free. Life is not pain-free. But we can stop turning our pain into suffering by compounding it, multiplying it, making it worse if we accept what's going on and open ourselves to change, even if we have no idea how it could possibly happen. In fact, usually that is the case. We have no idea, how could this possibly happen? Every other time there's been no way forward. I just run into solid granite walls. Nothing's ever going to change. Well, if I practice acceptance, believe me, doors start to open where before there was no door. You have to do it to see it, to believe it. Meister Eckhart said, be willing to be a beginner every single morning. We're all beginners all the time. If you ever get to feeling like you're getting pretty good at this spiritual growth stuff, I invite you to toss that idea out the window. The Spirit will do it for you, believe me, if that happens. And just realize the wonderful simplicity. I am a beginner. My meditation teacher said every time anyone sits to meditate, we are beginners. We're always beginning, always beginning again. That's where we want to be. We want to have beginner's mind. There's a whole book written about that. Famous book. We want to be beginners. So I ask you to consider, and you may already be considering, what are you holding on to? Right. In fact, I have to confess, I suspect you already know what it is. You already know what it is. So moving forward, we walk forward in faith and in confidence. Even if we feel like we're making it up, right? That works too. It works just fine. If you have to gin up in yourself somehow confidence, I can do this, you can use denial as an affirmation practice, which I'll talk about in a minute. Any way that you can get to the idea that there is a glimmer of hope somewhere in all of this, I guarantee you are right. It's better than a glimmer of hope. It is the sun itself, right? It is the Spirit itself. But it looks this big off in the distance. I've had experience in my life where I felt like I was at the bottom of a pit and there was no way out. And I could look up and see an opening at the top, and in that opening, this little tiny pinprick of light, like a star. Okay, that's what I want. I want that. And I found my way out. Myrtle Fillmore said we must let go of fear and embrace faith, for in faith we find our true power. Or another way to say it, in faith we allow the power of the divine that is within us to come forth and direct our lives. And you know I love Rumi. Rumi said, as you start to walk on the way appears. I lived my whole life unwilling to take step 1 unless I knew where step 10 was going. You can feel how limiting that was. It really kept me in a box in life. I now find I'm willing to take step 1 even if I'm not sure where step 2 is. And things are so much easier. And amazing things happen that I never could have dreamed up when I'm willing to move forward in that way. All right, so here's a practice in unity. It's called denial and affirmation. Denial doesn't mean we deny that it's happening. That's quite the opposite. But what we deny is that it has power over us. I'm denying that nicotine has power over me. Sure feels like it does, but I begin by saying cigarettes, nicotine, tobacco has no power over me. I am a radiating center of God's health and well-being. Can you hear the difference in those two statements? And then I went outside and had a smoke. Because these are not magic tricks. These are not magic incantations. What they do, though, is they show us very clearly the difference between the reality of where we're at right now and where we know we can be. It helps us find ourselves on the map, so to speak. So if I say, tobacco has no power over me, I'm a radiating center of God's divine health, I don't expect, it hasn't been my experience, that instantly all of a sudden that's true. What's true is I see very clearly what's going on, so I know which way to walk. Can you hear that? I know which way to walk. The denial and affirmation process shines a light on what is happening. And light is always of the Spirit. Right? Nothing is healed in the darkness. Only in the light can things be healed. So I invite you to undertake that practice and see the light that comes on for you as you make those statements boldly. You can write them out if you really want to anchor something. Write it out 10 times each morning and 10 times each evening. And it will become your worldview. And once you see it clearly, you'll know which way to walk. The Spirit guides, and you'll know which way to walk. The apostle said, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I feel like we've taken that sentence and made a whole spiritual movement out of it. That is exactly what we're doing. We're transformed by renewing our mind. Things begin in our mind. Mr. Fillmore said every time we let go of an error thought, that's what he called any thought that was not spiritually true, anything that was not of God, he called error thought, we must replace it with a truth affirmation. He's basically describing that practice. I acknowledge the error thought. The error thought is that tobacco has control over me. And no, tobacco does not have control over me. I'm a radiating center of God's health. We replace it with a truth affirmation. So instead of saying maybe I'm not good enough, if you've ever said that to yourself, I know I have, you could say I'm a divine expression of God's love and wisdom. Doesn't that sound better? That's what you want on your t-shirt. I'm a divine expression of God's love and wisdom. That is the truth about who you are. I already know that about you. That's the truth about all of us. The question is, how can we make that our lived experience? Awareness, acceptance, and release. That's how we do it. One day at a time, one moment at a time. Underpinning all of this is that we must trust God, which I think is not an easy thing to do. And even if in times in my life where I have found that I was willing and felt like I'm moving forward and I trust God and I'm taking the first step and I know it's going to be wonderful even though I don't know where it's going. And then the next day, where did that go? It's all of a sudden all that old fear is back. That's okay. It doesn't mean that anything's wrong. It means I'm growing and developing. I will find that place again, I guarantee you. And I did. And I have. I asked my prosperity teacher once, as we were working on visioning, and I talk about visioning a lot. We vision that sign. We're visioning changes to our youth ed. We're visioning changes to our sanctuary here. I always found that very difficult because I had an old story in me. It's still hanging around, but it's not nearly as strong. The old story is, if I want this, I have to figure out how to get the money to do whatever. It's always I, and it's always money. Now, where in that statement is the Spirit? Nowhere. Nowhere. So I said to her, how come every time I'm holding a vision, I can do that step, where you see clearly, exactly, in every detail, exactly what you want to do, or be, or have. You want to go to Hawaii, you picture yourself on the beach in Hawaii. Feel the sun, close your eyes, you can feel it. Right? We want that sign, we picture the sign. I had a piece of paper with a whole bunch of signs on it to help us picture the sign out in front. You can close our eyes and see it done. See it done. How come every time I do that, the very next thing that happens in my mind is I think, how am I going to get the money to do this? And she said, because you don't trust God. She didn't miss a moment, not a millisecond pass. She knew exactly what was going on. She said, because you don't trust God. And then she turned around and walked away. I don't know. Did she do that on purpose? That certainly emphasized it for me. And I was like, dang, she's right again. It's true. I often look to the Christian mystics in our lineage. One of them is Julian of Norwich, who said, you were made by love, made of love, and made for love. That is who you are. That is who I am. That helps me to trust in the Spirit, to remember that that is the underlying truth. Not that I have to figure out how to get the money, blah, 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 blah. I am love, you are love, God is love, God is within. And again, I love this one so much, I'm going to repeat it. As you start to walk on the way appears. And we are followers of the way. Right? Followers of the way of Jesus, who was the Christ. So I'm going to close with this. What if we're afraid to let go? What if what we're afraid to let go is the very thing that's preventing our growth. And honestly, it probably is. That's probably what's going on. That's been my experience. What would happen if you took a deep breath, decided to trust God, and let it go? What would happen? I invite you to find out for yourself. Here's our affirmation. I'll read it and then we can read it together. I let go of all that no longer serves me. I open my heart and mind to divine wisdom, divine love, and a new life. Let's say that together. I let go of all that no longer serves me. I open my heart and mind to divine wisdom, divine love, and a new life.